welcome to the podcast. My name is Thomas J. Sotvet.
And I'm your co-host, Vicky Sotvet.
And since this is the spookiest time of year and my favorite holiday of all time, we have for you a super special bonus episode of everyone's number 3 ranked horror movie podcast, Scaredy Cats.
I definitely thought you were about to say the number 3 ranked horror movie, and I was like, that's an interestingly specific number there, babe.
No.
I see now I was in error.
But we are talking about a very, very, very famous horror movie coming off of the Friday the 13th saga. So this episode is going to be released after Friday the 13th Part 2, and technically we said Gerald's Game was next, and we still will be reviewing that. As per usual, we're just shoehorning this one in between, so don't get mad at us. We're giving you bonus stuff. So Vicky.
Yes, Thomas.
Halloween.
Yes.
Or All Hallows Eve.
Yes.
Or as it was once called, Samhain. Are you familiar?
I am, with all 3 of those things.
Great. So Samhain was basically the pagan New Year. The Celts would harvest, they'd kill all their cows and pigs, and then they would celebrate all of the food that they had with a rad feast.
Feasting is good. I can get behind feasting.
At least that's what we think. There's actually not a whole ton of evidence as to how Samhain was originally celebrated, because unfortunately the Celts didn't like writing things down. It was a very oral tradition society. It wasn't until the Catholics got involved that they really started to write things down. How we ended up with Halloween also is because of Catholic meddling. Specifically, Pope Gregory IV. He didn't like pagans. He didn't like the pagans were doing their pagan things. And so he decided to hijack the holiday and make All Saints' Day instead.
Which is actually on November 1st.
It's on November 1st, which is where we get All Hallows Eve from, because that's the eve before All Saints' Day. It effectively turned Samhain into, All Hallows Eve, which eventually was contracted into Halloween. And that's how we have that popular season holiday. I don't know. I didn't even know where I was going with that.
You just stopped talking. So.
My brain misfired. So we're covering Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween specifically, because it has been remade by Rob Zombie. We're covering the first one, the 1978 film. So normally I would drop a couple factoids and I would talk about the movie and then ask Vicky what Vicky knows about this movie. But it didn't really make sense, and I don't know why it is I decided to do it in that order, since I would be telling you all about the movie and then ask what you know about it, and you'd be like, well, I know what you told me.
Everything you just said.
Yeah, I think that's happened a couple times. So I'm going to start asking you what you know about it before I kind of break down the movie for you.
Good
so
policy. I can get behind
what
that.
do you know about John Carpenter's Halloween?
It's got a William Shatner mask painted white.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes place on Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And it's by John Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also a slasher movie.
Yep. That's not bad.
That's it. That's all I got for you.
Okay.
That's all I got for you, fam.
So as you pointed out, it is directed by John Carpenter, who is a legendary horror director, one of my favorite directors of all time.
I think he just is your favorite director. You've got to stop saying he's one of. He just is at this point.
I have lots of favorite directors.
No, you don't.
Yeah, sure I do.
No, you don't.
How do you know what it is that I do and do not like? Anyway,
you can talk about John Carpenter all the time and how great he is.
So he also directed The Fog, Christine, and my favorite movie, probably of all time, The Thing, in 1982. It was produced and also co-written by, because John Carpenter was a co-writer. So his producer, Deborah Hill, also helped him write Halloween. She also produced Halloween 2. She also produced The Fog and Halloween Season of the Witch, many others. Interestingly, she's from Haddonfield, New Jersey, and the movie Halloween takes place in Haddonfield, Illinois. So it was written down. That's how it's written out. I don't know. I know it's Illinois.
We're gonna get a really angry email from Illinoisian?
An ill person.
An ill person from the 6th state?
Illinois. From an Illinois.
In Illinois.
Yes. It stars Jamie Lee Curtis, the Scream Queen herself, as Laurie Strode. Donald Pleasance, who is another pretty amazing actor, as Dr. Samuel Loomis, and Nancy Keys as Annie Brackett, and Nick Castle with Tony Moran as Michael Myers. Two of them kind of shared the Shatner mask to play Michael Myers throughout the movie.
Gotcha.
It had a hilariously small budget of $375,000, which is such a piddly amount of money. I mean, if we think about how the first Friday the 13th film, I believe, was made for $500,000. And so this was made for significantly less, and in my opinion is way better. To date, its box office is estimated between 60 and 70 million. So I would consider that to be a pretty huge success.
It's doing pretty good for itself.
Oh, yeah, it has been. A couple quick factoids about the movie beyond what I've already said. I mentioned that the script was co-written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. It only took them 10 days to write the script of Halloween, and it was originally going to be titled The Babysitter Murderers.
To be fair, and keep in mind I have watched 2 slasher movies until this point, it doesn't seem like it would take all that long to write a slasher script to me.
Oh, well, now you realize you have to write a slasher script in 10 days and then tell me how that goes.
I mean, okay.
In addition to being written quickly, it was filmed really quickly. Halloween only shot for 20 days.
See, that is way more impressive to me than writing a script in 10 days.
It was just a quick production, really, really quick in and out. As you mentioned, the Michael Myers mask is actually a Captain James T. Kirk mask, a William Shatner mask, that has been stretched and painted white to give it this kind of ominous blank stare. In one movie scene, the characters are watching The Thing from Another World, which is based on the 1951 horror movie based on the short story Who Goes There, which I've read and is pretty good.
Because it's what The Thing is based on.
It's what The Thing is based on. Yeah, funny enough, Carpenter went on to remake the movie only 4 years later. The Thing, which I've already talked about in this episode.
Friendly reminder to everybody, The Thing is one of the very few horror movies I have seen before doing this podcast, and I've in fact seen it 3 times because Thomas loves it so much that I've had to watch it.
It might be the greatest movie ever made.
I dispute that. I do not dispute that it has excellent practical effects, and the tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife.
Yeah, and just like the kind of like whodunit, but it's an alien. It's just so good. So well acted. Kurt Russell's in it. I don't know. Oh man. But we're not talking about The Thing. We're talking about Halloween.
We might have to do a special episode of The Thing just so you can get it out of your system.
We're doing it, but that's going to be like a special like 100th episode or something like that because yeah, that's creme de la creme. Anyway, so that's kind of all I got to say about Halloween. Oh, one more quick fact. Most of the actors purchased their own wardrobe, and like it was just their clothes.
That's just chill of them.
They just wore, I guess Jamie Lee Curtis's outfit. She went to JCPenney and bought it for $100.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good job, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah. So that's pretty much all I got to say about John Carpenter's Halloween. So, Vicky, how prepared are you for this film? How scary do you think it's going to be?
I don't know. Like medium?
Medium scary?
Medium scary.
Okay.
Because, the Friday the 13th, which admittedly spooked me, were not that spooky. And I have seen a John Carpenter movie. Mm-hmm. So I feel like between these two factors...
I definitely think that The Thing is scarier than Halloween. Some people might disagree with me, but I do think that The Thing is scarier. So...
The Thing is pretty scary. The first time, fun story for you at home, the first time I watched The Thing, it was on a summer property with 2 cabins, and we had to walk in the dark back to our cabin, and I'd had my flashlight, I made Tom turn on a flashlight, and I made Tom hold on to me the whole way, and then I made him get up, check the inside of the cabin we were staying in and under the porch before I went in the house, because I was so afraid.
Yep.
So, hopefully, this is not scarier than The Thing, or we're going to have a real time.
Yeah, no, it isn't. I don't think so anyways. I bet there's some people that would disagree because it depends on what scares you. Personally, I'm freaked out by sort of like body snatching scenarios and like assimilation scenarios.
So the Thing.
I don't like that. Yeah, it spooks me. I'm such an individual. I can't bear to lose my individuality.
Well, how about we watch The Thing and we can report to our listeners our thoughts.
We'll do The Thing eventually, but we're not going to go watch
movie.
The Thing right now.
How about we watch Halloween and report that to our listeners?
Yes, the special bonus Halloween episode featuring John Carpenter's The Thing. Anyway,
shut up.
We're going to go watch Halloween now, and we'll be right back to report if it is scarier than The Thing. We will see you on the other side, dear listeners. And, yeah, that's all she wrote. Hey, everybody. This isn't part 2, not yet. This is part 1.5. I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor for this week, Jimmy's Butcher Knives. If you feel like getting your kill on, look no further than Jimmy's. Jimmy's Butcher Knives. If you use the promo code Scaredy Cats at Jimmy's Butcher Knives, then you will get 50% off a whole bucket of blood with your butcher knife purchase. Just kidding. This is not a sponsored episode. But maybe one day, Jimmy's Butcher Knives. No, this is a quick shout out to my brother and editor Kyle Sotvet for doing an awesome job editing this. We really wanted to get this out to you guys on Halloween. And I know his schedule is very, very busy. I'm sure he's going to be working very, very hard to get this out to you guys on such a short notice. So thank you, Kyle, also known as Ninja Kittens on YouTube and Spotify. Go check out his stuff if you like dance music. It's awesome, and it's real, real great soundtracks for killing people, too. Wink, wink. Enjoy part 2, guys. Trick or treat.
I want tricks.
You want tricks?
Yes.
You don't want treats?
No. I'm mixing it up this Halloween.
Wow. All right. I think you're the first person in a long time that I've heard be like, tricks. Give me tricks.
I'm kidding. I would always prefer chocolate, preferably peanut butter cups, but...
Okay. And I won't play any mean, nasty jokes on you.
Please don't.
So, yeah, we just got back from trick-or-treating. It was a lot of fun. There were some kids dressed up, and there was a fellow walking around killing some babysitters.
Who are terrible babysitters. All of them.
No, Lori's a great babysitter.
Okay, other than Lori.
Lori's an awesome babysitter. Yeah, everybody else sucks. Well, really only Annie, because Annie's the only other babysitter. Realistically in the film.
That's still a 50% bad.
Okay, all right, yeah. So, okay, the babysitters in this movie are medium. If you take the average babysitting quality between those two characters.
The mean? Is it the mean or the median?
I don't know. The average. Just the average.
Average.
Yeah, let's just call it the average.
This is why I had to take high school math twice.
There you go. So we just got finished watching Halloween, and so now here's the part of the podcast where we are going to break it down piece by piece. So if you want to watch it, then please go do so. There's spoilers, but I mean, the movie's been out since 1978, so what you gonna do, man?
It's like that interview with Martin Freeman where he said something about The Hobbit, and the guy was like, oh, spoilers! And he was like, it's been out for literally 80 years, my man. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, like, people have lived and died since the movie has come out. Like, yes.
Many people have both lived and died since the book.
Exactly. Although I suppose you could say that about most medium. People are babies die all the time.
Okay, well, like average lifespan human beings.
Yes.
Like you could be born after The Hobbit comes out, live a good filled life, have a great grandkid, and then die.
Yes.
So
I am going to do my best to break down this movie critically because, as we established, I sort of have a platonic crush on John Carpenter.
Don't worry, that's what I'm here for.
And this movie's great. But I'm going to try and look at it from a analytical standpoint this time around instead of just like, hell yeah, like I normally do. So, Vicky, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so we start with the GoPro.
Before that, we get the pumpkin and the iconic score composed by John Carpenter, actually. And we see the jack-o'-lantern flickering, and it's... Supposedly, it looks like Michael Myers. It's supposed to look like Michael Myers close up holding a knife, but I've actually never seen it. They do a lot better of making it look like Michael Myers in the later movie, but in this one, I don't see it.
Yeah, it's a triangle and a circle.
Yeah.
It's a triangle and a circle. You can make a triangle and a circle be anything you want in your dreams.
Not a rectangle. Can't make a...
In your dreams.
Oh, in our dreams, right.
Maybe we're discussing non-Euclidean geometry. I don't know.
Okay, anyways,
after the pumpkin,
yeah,
we have our GoPro. I know it's not a GoPro. Don't write me angry emails. I just enjoy the look that Tom gives me whenever I call a point-of-view camera a GoPro.
You were doing so good last movie.
Love you. It's looking through a window at Michael's sister and her boyfriend.
Judith Myers. And
she has a name.
Yeah, it's on the tombstone. They say it like 18 times throughout the movie.
I thought that was talking about his mom.
No, Judith is his sister.
Okay. Anyways, Judith and the unnamed boyfriend are like, let's go get it on, and then have the world's shortest sex.
Oh yeah, it's super fast.
Like, by the time Michael walks back around the house, enters the house, grabs a knife and a clown mask, which is like 40 seconds of film, boyfriend's already on the stairs putting his shirt on.
Oh, he's out of there before Michael even enters the house. Like, it's that fast, I think.
No, because it's all from Michael's point of view at the beginning. So you see Michael in the doorway watching him go down the stairs.
Yeah, but he hasn't grabbed the knife yet, I don't think, at that point. Okay, well, anyways.
Because he goes through the kitchen first.
All right, that's fine. So it's
the world's shortest sex, is the point.
It's very short sex. So he grabs a knife from out of the kitchen, and we can see that he's got a little kid hand, little kid arm, and he's really close to the ground. So he's clearly quite young. In fact, I believe he is 6. Is he 6?
He's 6. The doctor straight up is like, I met a 6-year-old boy.
Right. Yeah, Loomis is like, 6-year-old boy, super evil. It was badass. Yeah, so he goes upstairs, and he picks up a clown mask that's on the floor that was being worn by the boyfriend to scare Judith Myers. And he goes walking into his sister's room, and she's hairbrushing topless.
Actually, I think she's just naked.
I thought she was wearing underwear. She might just be naked. I don't know.
She's barely dressed, if at all.
Anyway, naked hairbrushing. Right on.
Yes. And then she's like, oh, Michael! And then Michael murders her at exactly 10 p.m. Yeah,
starts stabbing her. And actually, weirdly, like, the camera, because once he puts on the mask, we can only see through 2 holes, right? Because it's like they put the mask over the camera. And weirdly, as he's, like, stabbing into her with the knife, the camera goes and looks at the arm. So it's like Michael is looking up at his arm while he's stabbing Judith, which is strange.
I don't know. I want to know what kind of supernatural strength a 6-year-old has to stab someone to death so quickly, though.
It's a pretty sharp knife, man. You can...
6.
Yeah, but it's a pretty sharp knife, maybe.
But 6. Anyways, the movie is set 15 years after this scene.
Yeah, he walks out of the house after killing Judith, and we see the parents pull up, and they're just like, Michael! And then we get this really awkward scene where they pull the mask off, and he's just this little kid sitting there stunned with this bleeding knife, and everybody just stares at him and says nothing as the camera kind of pans away. And it's artistically, it's good, but, like, it makes no sense how the parents just, like, stare at him for what feels like 20 seconds as the camera slowly pans away. And then we skip forward
15 years.
15 years.
To the doctor in a car with a nurse?
She's like
prostitute? I'm unclear.
No. She's a nurse. Her name is Marion Chambers.
You're right.
Yeah, she's new at the sanitarium, I guess. It's Smith Grove Sanitarium.
I thought she was just visiting.
Was she just visiting? I don't know what she does. I do know what she does. She smokes a lot.
Yes.
Because we see her smoking in the car, and then she throws an empty carton onto, like, a pile of other empty cartons. Yes. And we get some exposition from Dr. Loomis, who is Michael's psychiatrist at the sanitarium for these last long years. And he keeps calling Michael it. And she goes, couldn't we just call him, or call him him? And Loomis is like, if you like.
It is sort of a weird response.
Straight up, though, I love Loomis. Loomis is great.
Every time Loomis is on screen, I immediately am like, no, don't kill him. Don't like him. But anyways, so there's a bunch of inmates wandering around when they get there, and they're like, that's weird.
That's weird, because it's nighttime and pouring rain.
Yeah, and he's like, stay in the car, and he gets out of the car. And then he does the thing that I hate, which is that he could very easily in 10 seconds go, stay in the car and lock the doors. I'm going to check it out, because clearly something weird is going on, and I'm concerned that Michael might have escaped. But what he says is, stay in the car, and just leaves. And not explaining things to people that takes 15 seconds is the fastest way to get them killed. In horror movies, in war, it doesn't matter. Just tell people shit.
Well, Loomis tends to only want to talk about Michael when he's able to wax poetic, and maybe he just couldn't think of anything at the time, so he was just like, just stay in the car.
He couldn't think of, shit's fucked, stay in the car, lock the doors.
No, because that's he's always like, he's got the devil's eyes and blood. It's very Dante's Inferno with him when he's talking about Michael.
Anyways, Michael jumps on top of the car.
Yeah, he scrambles up on the car, and kind of another weird shot, but it's pretty freaky.
And then the nurse, for some reason, opens the window.
Yeah, to try and shout out at Loomis to be like, what's going on? Because she doesn't see Michael scramble up onto the car. She doesn't know this.
How do you not hear somebody scramble onto your car? How do you not feel that?
Well, we could hear it because John Carpenter's score was like, when he climbed up on the car, so we could hear it.
Yeah, but you could hear that if somebody climbed on your car, and you would feel that the car would move.
It was pouring rain, lightning storm.
The car would move.
All right. Anyway, she rolls down the window and starts shouting at him, and Michael grabs at her, and she ends up getting out of his grasp and hiding against the other side of the car, and he reaches down and he smashes the window, and she, in a panicked state, climbs out of the car after driving around for a bit, I think.
Accidentally. She's fighting him off, and her feet are touching pedals.
Yeah, she's touching pedals and stuff. And so she gets out of the car, and Michael just jumps off the roof, gets in the car, and fucking drives away. And this is a matter of quite intense debate amongst people that like studying and analyzing this film, because, and there's a throwaway line that kind of lazily explains it later, but why is Michael Myers driving? He was institutionalized at 6 years old. How does he know how to drive? Not only drive, but obey traffic laws, as we will see later.
Maybe it's like that 13-year-old who taught himself to drive on YouTube so he could go get him and his sister McDonald's.
Yeah, maybe. But, he drives well, is the thing. Anyway, so he drives off, and Loomis, and leaves Loomis and the nurse just kind of standing in the rain as he buggers off.
Yes. And then we go to Laurie?
Yep.
Is it Laurie or Annie who's talking to the kid? It's Laurie.
It's Laurie, yeah. It's Jamie Lee Curtis.
Right. And then it's the present day, and then walk around, and then the kid who's not named Anthony, which is all my brain
Tommy.
thinks of, thank you, is like, don't go to that house.
Tommy
Something
Doyle.
horrible happened there.
Yeah, Laurie's dad is a realtor and asks her to drop off some keys because I guess he's trying to sell the old Myers house. And the old Myers house, since it's the site of this murder 15 years ago, has become kind of an urban legend in Haddonfield. So, but we learn that Laurie is Tommy's babysitter and that she's going to be babysitting him tonight, which is Halloween night. And she promises all the great things they're going to do together, drops off the keys, and as she's walking away, we see that Michael is watching her from a window.
Yes.
Staring out at her.
And she doesn't notice him yet.
No, she doesn't see him yet.
Yes. Anyways, and then Tommy gives some, random exposition.
Yeah, he talks a little bit about the history of the place. And then I think after that we go back to Smith Groves, where Dr. Loomis is explaining to another doctor about how, they needed to be on high alert, and, of course, none of the traffic stops and stuff they put out to try and stop him all failed, and blah, blah. And we start to get this sense at this point that Dr. Loomis thinks that Michael Myers is the devil incarnate and is an unstoppable force of destructive, apocalyptic nature.
Yes, Loomis is also a dick and parked in the handicap spot.
He is, and as he drives off is when he's like, how did you get a car? And then Loomis is like, somebody must have been giving him driving lessons, and then gets in the car and drives away. And I'm like, I squint. Okay, all right, fine.
Then we go back to Laurie, who's in class. And then we have another weird expositionary piece where it's like, please tell me what these philosophers were talking about. And she's like, well, this philosopher thinks that fate is a product of what you create. And this philosopher says that fate never changes and it's inevitable because apparently fate is like war and Fallout or something.
It's because of religion.
Well,
Yeah.
the point is, it's a slightly heavy-handed way to reinforce the idea that all the characters are going to die regardless of what they do.
But she's looking out the window as in class, and she sees Michael now standing in the schoolyard. And we get the sense that since Michael saw her come up to his house, he's just going to start following her around now. And she sees him standing there, and then when she looks back, I believe he's gone. And then we see Tommy briefly at school, and he's getting bullied by these kids that are all poking at him and telling him the boogeyman's going to get him. And he ends up tripping and falling, and he's carrying a pumpkin, and he breaks the pumpkin on the ground. And then one of the bully kids goes running away and straight up runs into Michael Myers, who stops him. And the kid just looks up at him kind of petrified and then runs away. And that kid has no idea how lucky he is to have escaped. One thing this movie does a lot, which I really liked, is a lot of really long takes where you can kind of logically track where everybody is. Like, this movie's really, really good at giving you the layout of the town. Like, I was never confused as to where characters were in relation to one another. By the end of the movie, you know pretty much the whole layout of at least the street that the two homes are on.
Well, you know, when you only have $375,000, you can only afford
A couple locations.
So. Yeah, but then Laurie and Annie and I don't know what's her name?
Linda
are walking home after school, saying totally an obscene number of times.
That's Linda's thing. Linda says totally an insane amount of times in the she gets the least amount of screen time between Annie, Laurie, and herself. She gets the least amount of screen time and just says totally so many times, just packs all of her dialogue with it.
Yes.
It at least makes her identifiable.
Yes. The friendship between these three girls is very aggressive.
Yeah, it's very like hormone charged too. Like,
it's not even hormonal, it's just aggressive. It's like, I don't know. It to me was like the two popular girls who have the friend who they pick on who isn't really their friend.
Well, you get the sense at least maybe Linda's that way, but I think Annie and Laurie are tight. But yeah.
Insults her like 3 times in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, but it's in like a friendly kind of like jab way.
No, it's not.
All right, well, my friendships are different than yours.
Yeah, because you're a boy.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, and Laurie remarks that none of the boys want to date her because she's the smart girl. But then we see Loomis, and he's driving to Haddonfield because he's sure that that's where Michael's going to go. And he pulls off on the side of the road because there's a truck that is there. And he walks up to it and sees that whoever owns the truck is gone. And he walks away, and we see the body in the grass, and he's not wearing his like mechanic's uniform. And so that's where Michael got his mechanic's uniform. Yes. The movie actually does an interesting thing where we see Michael kitted out in his mask and his mechanic's uniform and like good to go. And then in later scenes, people explain how he got the stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of the other way around.
Do you know something I want to know? Why nobody wants to listen to the psychiatrist who's been treating somebody for 15 years who murdered their sister when he was 6.
Totally.
Nobody wants to listen to the man dealing with this individual for 15 years.
He does sound a little crazy when he talks about it, if you listen to him. So I can see why people would be like, yeah, okay, you've got the world's most dangerous 6-year-old grown up. Okay, buddy. But I still love him, so.
Yes. Anyways, Michael comes driving down the street. The 3 girls are on it.
Yeah, he, again, perfectly is driving. And I guess he's moving fast. I don't know, he didn't seem to be moving fast. But Annie screams at him, hey, speed kills! And Michael just slams on his brakes and then sits there for a second and then drives away. And I think by this point, Laurie's starting to realize that it's the same guy she keeps seeing around that's been, like, watching her from distances.
She's starting to get anxious.
Starting to get spooked. Yeah. And then... yeah, he ends up standing behind a bush and he's staring at them when after Linda leaves, and it's just her and Annie walking. And she sends Annie to go look because there's a guy hiding behind the bush, and she goes and looks and goes, "Man, he's not. There's nobody here." And I believe like teases her that he wants to take her out on a date, etc. And then Laurie straight up just like in the first jump scare of the film, I think, runs into the sheriff, who I guess couldn't be bothered to say, hey, don't walk into me. I'm here. Because, yeah.
Maybe he was texting.
Maybe he was texting in the 70s. That would be interesting.
I don't know. He's He's talented.
Yeah.
Anyways, we go back to Loomis, who's with some dude, and they're like, this here graveyard. And then they're like, this here Myers headstone is not here.
Yeah, Dr. Loomis asked to be taken to Judith Myers' headstone, and while they're walking through the graveyard, the guy he's with, who I guess is the graveyard tender or something like that, starts talking about this other murder case in the town over. And it sounds so interesting. He's like, oh yeah, the husband sat down to dinner, ate his dinner, excused himself from the table, went into the garage, grabbed a hacksaw, came back into the house, kissed his wife and kids, and told them that he loved them. And then just before he says what happens, Loomis is like, great Scott, the tombstone is missing. And we never get to find out about the hacksaw murders. Presumably, they were murders anyway. Don't know.
Or he killed himself with a hacksaw. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
There's a hacksaw. Somebody clearly dies. It's a time.
Interesting.
Anyways, Annie picks up Lori. And Don't Fear the Reaper is playing on the radio.
While they're smoking a doobie and while Michael is tailing them. It's pretty cool, actually.
Yes. And then they see the sheriff, who is also Annie's dad.
Yep.
And Annie's like, get rid of the joint. As if the whole car will not smell grotesquely of marijuana.
But again, in a later scene, Laurie's paranoid and like, oh, he definitely smelt it. Oh my gosh. And Annie's like, don't worry about it. So I feel like the driving thing, they wrote it and then realized that they needed to like explain it away in a later scene instead of going back and fixing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's standing outside of a hardware store with the alarm going off, and he reports to the two girls that there was a break-in, and the only thing that was stolen was a Halloween mask, a knife, and some rope. That's it.
Yes.
And so Michael has a very specific shopping list.
Yeah.
The
mask, rope, knife, everything you need for murder.
And then I don't think we have to really talk too much about what goes on before the night. It's a lot of Laurie seeing Michael around. She sees him standing in the yard out where there's like laundry drying. He drives around a bunch. Oh, there is one scene where Loomis arrives in Haddonfield and first meets the sheriff. And while he has his back turned, Michael drives past him in the car that he's looking for. And if he had just turned his head, then he would have seen Michael driving past, and none of this would have happened.
Yes.
But yeah, not a lot actually happens. It's mostly just tension building. Laurie's seeing Michael around more and more and more, and then nighttime happens.
Yes, and the girls get to their respective babysitting jobs, and then Loomis and the sheriff go to check out the old Myers house, and there's apparently just like a dead dog, and he's like, Michael must have gotten hungry. And then, bizarrely, the sheriff is like, could have just been a skunk. What skunks live in Haddonfield that they are eating dogs? This doesn't happen.
Skunks live in Haddonfield that they're eating dogs?
Because there's a dead, half-eaten dog.
Yeah.
And he's like, Michael must have gotten hungry. And the guy's like, no, it's a skunk.
Monster skunks. Giant skunks everywhere. In Haddonfield.
Eating dogs?
I don't know.
They're not.
No, I don't think he's not saying like the skunk killed the dog. I think he's saying that the dog corpse could be a skunk.
Oh, you know what? That makes a lot more sense.
I was struggling to track what you were trying to lay down, to be honest with you. I'm like, what? There's giant skunks eating dogs in this movie?
Well,
how did I miss that?
I was confused.
No, I don't actually see how you made that mistake, but I'm glad you did.
Well, that's rude.
So yeah,
Anyways, Loomis is like, I'm just gonna wait here for Michael. He'll come home. And my next note was, you're gonna die. That's what you're gonna do. Which he did not.
He does not.
I was fully expecting the sheriff to like walk away and Michael to be like, stab, stab.
Surprise, stab. So yeah, the Laurie settles in babysitting Tommy. Annie
who has the strangest named superhero collection of comics.
Oh yeah, do you have any of those written down?
Laser Boy.
Laser Boy.
Nucleus Boy.
Yeah, Nucleus Boy, and then Tarantula Man.
Right, it's like who named these?
Well, they were probably like Spider-Man, but safe knockoff kind of thing. So yeah, Annie is babysitting Lindsay Wallace, who lives across the street from Tommy, where Laurie is babysitting. So the two of them are babysitting two different kids on either side of the street, and we learn that the plan is that Annie is going to deposit Lindsay off with Lori and Tommy so she can go to be with her boyfriend Paul, and Linda and her boyfriend Bob will go to the house of Lindsay's house and fuck in their parents' room. This is their plan.
Level of unnecessary complication.
But also, who goes to have sex in someone else's house? It's very weird.
Don't get shame, Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, if you're into that, as long as it's not in my house. So that we learn that this is the plan. Unfortunately, Annie ends up spilling some butter on her clothes
and immediately strips fully naked in the kitchen, except for her knee-high socks, because those are still sexy.
Yes.
Because horror movies just really be loving their naked girls. And then she gets a shirt out of the hamper and just like
throws it on.
Puts a shirt on without buttoning it up.
Nope.
And then just walks through the yard in her shirt and knee-high socks to the laundry, which is apparently in a separate.
Yeah, it's like in it's like in a small like side house thing.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's weird.
It is weird. But she goes and she puts the laundry on and gets caught in the window because the door has a habit of locking, I guess, on its own. And so she needs to try and climb out the window, but she gets caught. And then her boyfriend Paul calls, and Lindsay, the little girl who's sitting on the couch watching the Thing from Another World, and she just. Like, Lindsay has not given a shit about a single thing that has gone on in this movie. She's been so enveloped in this movie. But she picks up the phone, and Paul asks her to go find Annie. And she goes out and helps Annie get free from the window, and the two of them go back in the house.
Yes, and then...
And again, throughout all these scenes, like, there's a lot of build-up before things actually start kind of happening. And throughout all these scenes, you see Michael in the background, or he's walking around, so his presence is still known.
Yes, and then Annie takes Lindsay over across the street, still wearing just not her shirt and knee-high socks, which is very bold to just saunter through the street.
She throws on a blanket.
Not really. She puts it on her shoulder. She's not wearing it. It's not covering anything.
She's got a poncho.
And then she shows up, and she's like, "So, Lori, I made some phone calls to that boy you like.
Right.
Ben Tramer.
Ben Tramer.
Who they refer to exclusively as Ben Tramer and never as Ben, like he's some sort of cryptid, like the Mothman.
I know some people that you refer to them by their first and last name for some reason. Like, that's just...
But never every time.
I've known kids that, like, that's just been who they are.
Like who?
I grew up with a lot of Joshes, so you had to call them by Josh and their last name, or else nobody would know which Josh you were talking about.
Yeah, but you do that once. You're like...
I don't know, maybe there's a bajillion Bens at school. Maybe that's why they have to use Ben Tramer's last name.
Every time. Like a cryptid.
I'm just offering an explanation. I knew a lot of Joshes. None of them were cryptids.
That you know of.
Not that I know of. Got blurry photographs of them. Anyway, yeah, so she says that she went and called on Laurie's behalf because she learned earlier that Laurie's got a crush on this guy. And is like, ooh, Laurie likes you. You guys should go to the dance together. And Laurie's like, no, Annie, you didn't.
Yes, it's very dramatic.
And Annie totally did.
Teenagers. Anyways, Lindsay returns... No, who's Lindsay? Annie returns to the house.
Annie goes back to the house because now she's going to go pick Paul up. But Paul never gets picked up because she gets in the car after walking around the house a lot.
Oh, but before that, she goes to the car first and it's locked, and she's like, great, I need the keys. And then she goes and walks around the house a lot, and then she comes back and opens the car door, and then she's like, huh, wasn't that just locked?
Right, it's unlocked now, and there's fog on the windshield.
Right, and it's unlocked because there's a Michael in it.
Yeah, so after she kind of like is like, weird, why is it steamy in here? Michael's like, it's steamy because of I, and leans forward and starts strangling her.
Yes.
And then finishes her off, I think, with a throat slit.
Well, he definitely stabs her, but I thought it was actually really cool in this bit because there's no blood visible. You just kind of see her head slowly sliding down the window, but the lighting gets progressively more red as it unfocuses because of the upholstery in the car.
You know, to this movie's credit, it's not super gory. Not really. Like yes, there's stabbing.
Practical effects are expensive.
And there's sound effects, but there's not a ton of blood.
Because practical effects are expensive.
Yeah, and this movie wasn't made for very much. So yeah, that's the end of it's the end of Annie, and poor Paul is never getting a ride.
Or the sex that he was promised.
Poor Paul.
Poor Paul.
He's the real victim here.
He's not.
No.
Anyways, we cut back to the other house, and Tommy watches Michael carry Annie's body into the house.
Yeah, and this poor kid, the entire movie, Tommy keeps seeing Michael and is like, it's the boogeyman! And then the moment Laurie goes to look out, she's like, Michael's gone. And she's like, stop saying stuff like that, Tommy. And Tommy's like, no, I actually honestly saw this guy carrying this corpse. Of course, he doesn't say, like, oh, he went inside the house. He just is like, okay, yeah, maybe I didn't see.
Yes.
So. And then we see Loomis being a dick to kids, and it's great. So he's right now staked out at the old Myers house, because that's where he assumes Michael's going to be. Well, that's where he's sure that Michael's been staying. And these kids, clearly it's part of a Halloween tradition, go up to do like a knock on the door on the Myers house sort of thing. And one of the kids goes up there, and Loomis is like in the bushes hiding and like angrily whispers, "Get your ass away from there." Like in like an ominous voice to scare the kids away. And I'm just like, who is this psychiatrist man crouched in the bushes whispering ominously at children?
To be fair,
I love him.
To be fair, he does think that a crazy murder man is going to come any moment and murder them.
He just goes about everything he does very unorthodox, and I love it.
Yes. It's at this point that I began to wonder if they compensate for the lack of it being fall with the decoration in the house. Because all of the decor inside all of the houses is very heavily orange, red, or yellow.
Yeah. And there's
very fall tones.
And there's jack-o'-lanterns everywhere.
Well, yeah, because it's Halloween. But I was just wondering if it's like, maybe if we put enough fall colors into the inside of the houses.
Yeah. Well, I was telling Vicky that because when they filmed it, it wasn't actually the fall, so all the leaves and stuff are green on all the trees, and they actually had to paint leaves fall colors and scatter them around, and I'm sure it was some poor intern's job to gather up all the leaves again and then move them to the next scene. It's pretty great.
Can you imagine that on your resume? Oh, I see here you worked on John Carpenter's Halloween. Can you tell me what you did? I picked up leaves.
I was the leaf wrangler. That's what they called me. But anyways, yeah. Jack-o'-lanterns everywhere, and where it is most egregious is in the scene in this part of the movie where now Linda and Bob go to, I guess, Lindsay's
house.
Yeah, go to the Waller's house where Annie is now dead somewhere in the house, and because they were going there to have sex, that was the big agreement, right? And so they go up to the bedroom, they start banging it out, and there's a freaking jack-o'-lantern on their side table, like
that's lit. It has a candle that's lit in it.
Like, who does that?
Those guys. Again, don't kink shame.
Okay, these people are into some stuff, man.
Don't kink shame, Thomas.
But anyways, they also have the shortest sex.
Well, it's weird. They have half of the world's shortest sex, and then the phone rings, and he like dramatically rolls off her, and he's like, "I can't focus. I'll just take the phone off the hook."
Okay, I can focus again. Let's go. Yeah.
And then they have like 12 more seconds of sex,
yeah.
And then they're like, "Oh, that was so good."
And while they're having sex, we see Michael's shadow over them, moving back and forth. And then they finish up, and then Bob's gonna go get another beer, and Linda says, "Oh yeah, get me a beer too."
Yes, and I want to point out, Bob puts on more clothes to go down to the kitchen to get a couple of beers than Annie did to run across the yard, put her laundry on, run back across the yard a couple more times, run across the street, and then back across the street.
It's because nobody wants to see Bob naked.
Certainly the paying American public did not.
No, goodness no. So he goes downstairs, and he grabs a beer, and he notices, I think, the door is open. And then he opens up a closet, because I think he hears a noise, and Michael comes charging out of the closet, grabs him by the throat, lifts him up against the wall, and then takes his big-ass, like, knife and pins Bob to the wall like Wall is a fucking painting. And it's awesome.
I just want to point out that Michael Myers is so good at stabbing people that they die instantly in one stab, somehow, miraculously.
And stay aloft, because he pins him to the wall and then takes a step back. And then he stares at Bob for a while, and he tilts his head back and forth, almost like he's kind of like assessing how well he did. He's like, I don't know.
It's a little crooked there, man. Just gotta straighten, get it level.
Like, again, Bob's just becomes a painting in that moment. Michael makes him a beautiful painting. And then we go back upstairs, and Linda is in bed, and Bob reappears, quote unquote Bob, wearing a sheet over his head with his glasses.
It's really just Michael wearing a sheet.
It's just Michael wearing a sheet. And I was telling Vicky this while we were watching it. When I was a teenager, I once went for Halloween as Michael Myers under a bedsheet with glasses over him. And it was so obscure that nobody got it. Mostly because I was an 8-year-old child, but...
Killing it.
Thank you. I didn't actually kill anybody.
I'm glad. We would be having a very different relationship.
Yeah.
I was trying to say relationship, romance, and conversation in the same word, and none of those came out.
Relationmancation. Yeah, I
wasn't even trying to combine them. My brain was just like, any of these 3 words will do. And then my tongue got them all at the same time.
Oh, man.
It was bad. Anyways.
So she's talking to who she thinks is Bob, and she's like, see anything you like, and flashes him. And Michael does not like. And then she's like, can I get your ghost, Bob? And Michael doesn't find that funny either. And so she finally gets frustrated with who she still thinks is Bob and decides that she's going to call Laurie.
Right. And so Laurie picks up the phone just as Michael comes up and starts strangling good old Linda.
With the phone cord.
And then Laurie is like, why are you just making screaming noises into the phone? That's not normal.
Yeah, she assumes at first it's a prank, but I think as it goes on, she starts to realize, like, oh, are you okay? What's going on? And then, yes, so that's how Linda meets her end. And then next, I think Laurie goes and checks on the kids, and they're in bed by now. And so she decides she's going to go across the road to check on Linda, because that was a weird phone call.
Yeah, and so she goes in, and the house is dark, and she's like, that's weird. And she goes upstairs, and then finds Linda and the missing headstone.
Yes, so Linda's like splayed out on the bed, all Jesus style.
Dressed.
Dressed, yeah. With Judas' headstone on the bed, and she runs into that and is screaming, and then Bob drops from the ceiling and she screams, and then she backs up into a cabinet and it swings open, and there's Annie dead in there, and Laurie's just having a bad night, y'all.
But you know what? She is like the first person to reasonably respond to finding bodies. It's not just like,
oh no,
oh, I better get out. It's like actual panic.
Oh, she screams. There's a reason she's called the Scream Queen. She screams. And she goes out into the hall, and she's freaking out, obviously. And we see Michael slowly appear in the doorway behind her. And he takes a swing at her with his knife, but misses and just only manages to graze her. And she cuts her arm, but it's enough to spook her that she falls over the side of the banister and down the stairs in what looks like a very painful fall.
Actually, she falls almost exactly the same way that somebody was murdered on an episode of Forensic Files.
Oh, yes, that's true.
The old lady who's murdered by her son because he wants her money.
Yes, it's weird that I remember that, considering there's like a million Forensic Files episodes.
It's because we've watched them all, babe.
Anyway, now we begin our final girl circuit with Laurie sprinting away, and Michael starts to walk after her. And we see Laurie run to Annie's, or the kitchen. She runs to the kitchen.
Well, she has to run to the kitchen, and then all the doors have been locked.
Right, and there's a rake jammed up against one door to keep it closed.
Right, so she just barely manages to break the glass and move the rake and flee.
Yeah, just as Michael kicks down the door to get to her. And she runs to the neighbor's house, and she starts screaming and pounding on the door, and the lights go on, and the neighbors open up the blinds. And then the neighbors just, like...
Close the
blinds and turn the lights off. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's kind of rude. So she runs back across to Tommy's house.
Kitty, what's her face much? Genevieve? Kitty Genovese? I believe it's Kitty Genovese.
Except that's been debunked.
Totally, but those people would have totally been those fucking people.
If it had happened that way, those people would have been there.
Would have been those fucking people.
Right.
But anyways, and then she runs back to Tommy's house.
Yes, and
she starts screaming for the kids to open the door because the door's locked. And then she pretty smartly, with probably a surprising amount of upper body strength. That was not a tiny pot. Manages to, like, especially since she was cut in the arm, she manages to, like, yeet it up into the window where it breaks apart, and then a very sleepy Tommy awakens and is like, yeah, I'm coming. And Michael's slowly walking across the street with his knife at her at this point. She's just freaking out.
Yes, but Tommy does manage to get the door open before he gets there, and he's like, what's going on? And she's like, go upstairs, lock the door, just.
Again, Laurie's a good babysitter.
Yeah, her priority for the whole rest of this movie is to make sure the kids are safe.
Yeah, Laurie's a great babysitter.
I hope she got a bonus.
I imagine she didn't. I bet she didn't get paid at all.
That's...
Well, if you just consider the trauma of it all, I bet the parents were, like, showing up to her hospital room afterwards and like, so, by the way, I guess we owe you, like, $100. So here you go.
I hope so. Anyways, she grabs a knitting needle from her earlier knitting.
Right.
And then when Michael shows up, she stabs him in the neck.
Yeah, she freaking stabs him.
Good job.
Yeah, because he goes to stab at her and misses and stabs the couch. For some reason, he just cannot stab Laurie. And she manages to get him with the knitting needle, and he falls down on the ground for like...
On the dead.
Not the dead. For our first fake out of like 3 in this movie.
Yes, and then she runs upstairs to the children, and she's like, okay, we're going to go for a walk. It's going to be fine. And Tommy's like, was it the boogeyman? She's like, no, I killed the boogeyman. And then Michael appears on the stairs.
Michael goes, who'd you kill? And,
sure wasn't me.
And they're like, oh no.
And so Laurie, like, shoves the kids back in their bedroom.
Locks the door.
Yeah, and runs into the other room.
Yeah, and she tries to make it look like she climbed out a window. She opens up the window, and then she hides in the closet, hoping
And then she actually ties the door knobs together.
Yeah, smart move.
Laurie is actually very smart and methodical under duress.
Well, she's established early in the movie to be, like, a good student, and people don't like her because she's smart, and yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, Michael starts breaking down the closet door.
Yes, he does not fall for her trick. It fails.
And she grabs a hanger and starts untwisting it.
And I wrote down here, Laurie proves Birdemic correct when it claims coat hangers are effective weapons. Because she twists up that coat hanger, and then when Michael comes for her, fucking stabs him in the eye with it.
I mean, to be fair, I think getting stabbed by anything in the eye.
Totally.
I
but
poke myself in the eye when I'm, like, trying to brush my teeth and I can't see.
Yes, but specifically in the movie Birdemic, they are using coat hangers to try and fight these, and it's stupid and absurd. But then here's Laurie stabbing Michael freaking Myers with a coat hanger, and suddenly it's awesome.
Are you implying they're trying to stab birds with coat hangers?
That happens in the movie, yes.
Okay, see, that is not an effective weapon strategy.
Well, I mean, but I'm saying that, like, comparatively, some birds and Michael freaking Myers, who's more likely to be taken down by a coat hanger. I guess Michael Myers.
But
because
it's easier to stab somebody in the eye than it is to skewer a whole-ass bird.
Anyway, it's impressive is all I'm saying. MacGyver would be proud. And so we get our second fake out of the movie.
No, not quite, because he's, like, flopping around and drops the knife, and then she grabs it and stabs him.
And she stabs him twice. And, yeah, he falls to the ground. One thing I don't like about what Laurie's doing is every single time she gets the knife, she drops it immediately beside him, assuming that he's dead. I would keep that shit on me.
Yeah. And then she goes to get the kids again, and she's like, go run to the Mackenzie house and call the cops.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going with you for some reason.
That was weird. I think it's more just like she's traumatized, not thinking straight,
or she's wounded, mate. Because like she has been like falling down the stairs, kind of sucks.
And after falling down the stairs for the entire running away from Michael, she's limping quite badly.
Yeah.
And after like, I don't know, the acrobatics of jumping up to try and stab him and cramming herself in the closet and stuff. That's like true. I don't imagine she's in the best way.
That's true. So, but. Loomis is walking by just as the kids run screaming out of the house.
And I love that scene. Just these kids running out of the house screaming, and Loomis being like, ah, yes, there you are. And goes in. It's such a good scene. I love it.
Yes, and then Michael gets up and starts strangling
Laurie, yeah.
And then Loomis shows up and shoots him.
Yep, shoots him
5 whole times.
Yeah, shoots him once, and then he lets go and stumbles away, and then he walks into the bedroom and just unloads. And Michael ends up stumbling backwards out onto a porch, and then over this banister and into the backyard. And we hear a thump, and he looks out, and there's Michael splayed out on the lawn, apparently dead.
For the third time.
And as he's standing there looking, he goes to check on Laurie, and Laurie asks him, was that the boogeyman? And Loomis responds, as a matter of fact, it was.
And then he looks out the window, and Michael's not there.
And Michael's gone, setting up a sequel. And then we get a shot of Loomis being like, of course he's not dead. And then we revisit almost every location that we've seen in the movie where it just kind of pans around and it shows all these places. And we hear Michael's breathing, and it just gets louder and louder and louder as we pan to all these locations that we've been to.
And then the movie ends.
And
I was so mad. I was like, that's it? That's it? And I was upset.
To be fair, they knew, this time around they knew they were going to be doing a sequel, right? Okay. So, like, it's not like Friday the 13th stupid whack ending for part 2. Well, I guess they probably knew they were doing a sequel for that one as well. But that ending is whack. Whereas the Halloween, it's clearly setting up the second one. Mm-hmm. Anyways, so yeah, that's Halloween. So now is the part where we are going to break down ratings to discuss how it is that we liked it, how well made we thought it was, and how spooky it was. So, Vicky, how well made was this film on a scale of 1 to 10?
Considering the budget, specifically, I would give it probably an 8. Mm-hmm. This is in consideration of the budget, because if we weren't considering the budget, I'd probably give it like a 6, maybe a 5. But it comes up with clever ways not to show you, things that do need expensive practical effects. Like, okay, I'm going to have a little clown mask on because it's from my point of view, or I'm going to slump over in the car and you're going to turn red, that kind of thing. So I thought it did a good job with what it had in creating that tension. And
it's also good to bear in mind with this movie that even though it wasn't the first slasher film that goes to Psycho, it really propelled the slasher genre into the next kind of generation of films. So a lot of tropes that you might see in it made. Like, it was the first movie to do them.
I didn't think it was tropey.
No. But I'm just like, for people out there that might watch it and be like, oh, it was just like straight out of the box horror film. You have to keep in mind that this was like the first movie to do any of that.
Right. So scale of 1 to 10, how well made do you think it was?
I am going to give it a 9 because just the cinematography and the original score is so good. Even if it does get a little bit repetitive at times, it's used perfect scenes to kind of elevate the tension, and I just love all those long takes and all the long shots, and the acting is quite good. Jamie Lee Curtis is amazing. I freaking love Loomis.
Do you know Jamie Lee Curtis is technically a baroness?
Really?
Yeah, she married a baron.
Well then.
Yeah, she saw him acting in the Spinal Tap movie and was like, I'm gonna marry that guy, and married him like 6 months later and has been married to him for like 40 years.
Damn! Jamie Lee Curtis. Shit.
Yeah.
Good job, girl.
Yeah, she's been married for like 39 years.
That's spectacular. Yeah, so I'm giving it a solid 9. I think it's well made. So, Vicky, scale of 1 to 10, how much did you enjoy the movie?
Like a 6.
A 6.
It was well acted. It was interesting. I found there was a lot of build. I don't know. I'm not a super huge fan of build. Just infinitely.
No?
No.
Yeah. That's fair.
6.
I'm going off of this viewing, which is probably like my
bajillionth?
14th time I've seen it. But
you have a problem.
It's a good movie. I really enjoyed it. I especially enjoyed sitting down to analyze it purposefully instead of just sitting to view it, to really try and like pick it apart. I really, really enjoyed that, and it enabled me to appreciate more of the subtle things they did to kind of elevate the whole experience. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm going to give it an 8, I think.
Okay.
I love this movie.
I know you do.
All right, so then our last rating is, how spooky was it on a scale of 1 to 10? How scary was Halloween?
3.
A 3? Wow, that is less than Friday the 13th Part 2.
It's because Friday the 13th, I don't know if it's because there were more people who died, so I was more stressed the whole time because I knew that there was like more gory death. I don't know if it was that or if it was just there was so much build or like, but like, I don't know.
That's fair. Oh, that's fair. Although I'm definitely no longer scared by it, I've seen it so many times, I know everything that's going to happen. If I was to kind of take it back to a place for when I first saw it, I would give it a solid 5. Just the amount of tension that it's able to build, and Michael is a scary antagonist, and the setting helps to make you feel the isolation that the characters are feeling. So yeah, I'm gonna say a 5. I think that it's kind of middle of the road for how scary something is.
For sure.
Yeah. So that is our coverage of John Carpenter's Halloween, and that ends it for this super special bonus episode that's going to be released on Halloween. So happy Halloween to all you listeners out there who are listening to this same day. Happy
Post-Halloween?
Tuesday to everybody else that's listening to this episode on a Tuesday. Shout out to you guys. Next episode will be dropping on our usual schedule. Expect that in, I guess, from Thursday on Monday.
No, there's another week in between.
Right.
We're not doing 3 episodes in 1 week. Oh no, my man.
All right. And we will be, as we mentioned last episode, we will be doing Gerald's Game. So join us then. But until then, I am Thomas J. Sopvet.
And I'm Vicky Sopvet.
This has been Scaredy Cats. Thank you, and be cool to each other.